Hello everyone and welcome to episode 27 of the Layton Fitness podcast. Now in today's episode we're going to be discussing weaker body parts, how to potentially improve these areas on your physique and how to manipulate your training to make sure you can improve upon these areas. Now it's firstly important to note that when I'm discussing this, I'm only really discussing this for intermediate to advanced trainees. Those individuals with, say, less than 18 months, 2 years training, I really do believe you should focus on full body improvement. It's pretty difficult to pinpoint these weaker areas until you have some amount of muscle mass on your frame. So it's important to give that little caveat. Now, if you're one of those individuals who is still a beginner, just focus on a very simple generic program which is going to stimulate all of the major muscle groups, and it's then a case of making progress over time. And as soon as you get to that 2 year mark, 18 month, 2 year mark, this is when you may start to see some weaker body parts, and then you can do more of a specialised program. Now as you become more advanced, especially if you have aspirations of potentially competing or you just have a goal of a more balanced physique, tailoring your programming to suit your weaker body parts is really key. And if you look at, say, some of the best natural bodybuilders in the world, they all do this. They all focus their training upon improving those weaker body parts. And this can have a significant difference on the way your physique looks, and ultimately gives you that balanced physique that you're craving. And it just makes sense that there's certain body parts that are lagging. By just continuing to focus on a generic program, those body parts are going to continue to lag. They need ultimately more volume over a period of time. You need to start seeing progress on those weaker body parts. Now, how do we go about doing this? Well, first we need to take a step back and realise the most influential key factor for increasing hypertrophy muscle growth, and that is, as we discussed several times on my podcast before, increasing volume over time, which is sets times reps times load. So therefore, in layman's terms, this is really about using a variety of rep ranges, trying to focus the majority of your efforts on the big compound lifts, and focusing on making improvements in terms of seeing strength gains within those particular rep ranges, adding more sets to increase volume, but ultimately doing more work over a period of time. However, as discussed on some other podcasts, the key with volume is the load needs to be heavy enough. So it's just an important consideration, but ultimately using a variety of rep ranges, and then you're focusing on increasing strength within those rep ranges and or adding more sets, adding more total work to your week. And if you continue to do that, and as long as it's progressive, you're going to see progress, with the caveat you're in a caloric surplus. So how do we go about hitting these weaker body parts? The key really is, as I discussed just then, is increasing training volume. But at the same time, it's important to note that too much volume can potentially hamper us. We may struggle to sufficiently recover from it. As such, it's important to reduce some of the volume on some of your stronger body parts. And there's several ways you can do this. I think one of the easiest ways is to increase the frequency on these body parts, because it's another important consideration that you don't want to increase volume too much within a session state, that which is density, but also increasing frequency can be a great way to increase volume over the course of the week, but your performance will still not be hampered than, say, for example, if you just try to fit in as much volume as possible into one session, and towards the end of the session that your performance and or loads may be reduced because you're trying to do too much work in a short space of time. So that's the overriding principle. We need to reduce volume on some of our stronger body parts and increase volume on some of our weaker body parts. So as discussed, this will be by doing more exercises, doing more sets, focusing on increasing the frequency of training these body parts. All three of these factors can help increase training volume over time, in addition to obviously getting stronger within your required repetition ranges. Again, focusing on that progressive overload, you need to be focused on trying to, certainly within your week, pick compound lifts. So for example, if your weaker body part was deltoids, focusing on the majority of your reps on a big overhead lift, so whether that's a standing or seated overhead barbell press or a dumbbell press, some compound movement, that should be your main focus. And then in addition to that, you can have some isolation, lateral raises, etc. within that, but the main focus you should be applying your energy is focusing on increasing the overhead compound lift. In addition to that, as I've said before, you need to be in a small surplus of calories, and the surplus will be dictated by how advanced you are. So the more advanced you are, you need to appreciate you're closer to your genetic potential, and therefore the surplus will be smaller, but any large surplus will just result in large amounts of body fat gain. I just want to give you a little bit of an example before I finish. So at this moment in time, my arms and shoulders, deltoids, are my biggest, weakest muscle groups. Now because of this, I'm training these more frequently. So I'm training these 3 times a week, and ultimately I have 3 days per week where I'm just training these muscle groups. It's all about these weaker areas. And then in addition to that, I have 2 other sessions where I train everything else. So I'm ultimately training 5 days a week, but I've got a huge amount of focus on those weaker body parts, focusing on doing multiple sets for various exercises to hit these muscle groups. And again, I'm focused on progressive overload, focused on increasing my strength on these various lifts. And over a period of time, within a caloric surplus, you'll notice that these body parts will improve. Now it's also interesting that your stronger body parts, despite there being less volume, will still for the most part naturally improve as well. This is because these stronger body parts don't need as much volume to see progress. These are the ones that you find much easier to make progress on. So hopefully you found this useful, and hopefully you can potentially start applying some of these principles. Very easy way to do this is almost similar to what I'm doing. Just say for example, if you're training 5 days a week, you could do an upper lower split for the 4 days, and then you could have a 5th day where you're hitting weaker body parts. Or for example, if you're doing a 4-day-a-week program, you could do a push-pull legs, and then the final day could be a weaker body part day. So it's easy to try and add these weaker body part days within your routine. Now it doesn't have to just be weaker body parts. You can find ways to add volume for these weaker areas within a more structured way. However, it's really just an easy way to almost call it a weaker body part day and start applying these principles we discussed. So like I said, this is only really for the intermediate to advanced. If you're a beginner, focus on just increasing muscle mass everywhere. And after that 18-month, 2-year period, you'll start to potentially see these weaker body parts occurring. You can adapt your training to suit. So thank you very much for listening. I'll look forward to speaking to you next week. If you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to James Layton, Layton Fitness.co.uk, and you can download that immediately. Okay, thank you very much guys. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care.